Microsoft seems to think that XML template parts are not so useful, and we disagree. The MVPs in the world here think that XTPs are very useful, and I'll explain more in a second. But they're very easy to create. You start with InfoPath, and one of the options you have here is to create a template part. And so you just pick template part. You can actually design a template part for 2007, or you can design it for 2010. And here we're going to choose 2007 or 2010 here, and we'll create one. And this template part, you can see it's just a blank form. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a template part today. So first thing I'm going to do, just create a template part, show you how to do that. And because I know that a lot of people are on Twitter these days, we have a nice new post here from Chris Griss here just today on InfoPath currency converter. So he blogged this earlier this morning, and he's got a nice site here, nothing but SharePoint. They do a lot of great stuff. And so he's got a nice article here on InfoPath currency converter. If you go to Twitter and you search for InfoPath, it'll be in the list of recent tweets, right? So he's created this nice currency converter here. And what he's done is he's created this using an InfoPath form. But I'm guessing that a lot of you want to use this kind of currency conversion for many of your forms. So let's do that. So we're going to create a real simple form here, and we're just going to create a layout. Or so interrupt me if you can't hear me or if the screen is going crazy. We'll create a simple layout here for our form, and I'm just going to choose, it doesn't really matter what we choose here, but I'll just choose this here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add let's try this again here. Sorry, folks. Okay, so I'm just going to add that data connection to that currency converter web service that Chris is talking about. Now, we'll talk more about data connections in a second, but this is a data connection that's on the web. Everyone has access to it. This is just one of the many data connections, web services. InfoPath is a great tool. It's the only InfoPath, it's the only Office form that allows you to connect to web services without any code. So what you see me doing right now is I'm contacting that web service, and it's pulling down some values, and I'm going to configure the web service for my currency conversion. And hopefully it'll return here in a few moments. This is a live demo, so we're talking through it here as we wait for it to come back. And it looks like it has come back. The web service has one method, just conversion rate, and it takes two parameters. We're going to convert from USD dollars, United States dollars, to United States dollars. And we'll make sure that we don't automatically retrieve the values when the form opens. And then we're going to just go into that secondary data source and expand the query fields tab. And we're just going to drag the from field over. And we're going to drag the to field over. And I know what we're going to do is we're going to drag that conversion rate over. Oops. Notice that when I drag these over, if the whole row is selected, it will correctly parse out the label, and you'll see it there. Okay, and then we have to do one more thing. We have to add a button that's going to let us do the conversion. So we'll go back to our Home tab, find control here for that button. And we're going to add a rule to the button, and the button's going to query our new connection. Okay, and then it'll do one more thing. It's going to set a value, but before we do that, we have to create the value. We're going to call this currency converter, and we're going to add a field for converted date time, and this is a date time field. And what we're going to do when we click on the button is we're going to actually set that value so that we know when we converted the currency. And we're just going to set it equal to the time when they convert it. And there's a function here in InfoPath called now that allows you to set the time. I'm just going to use that. Okay, so that's all there is to it. Here's our new XTP. We're going to preview it. And let's say we want to convert USD to Japanese yen. Just click the button. It's going to go off to the web service. It's going to get the rate. Now, it did not give us the converted time or the date of the converted time, so we'll add another field in here, and we'll drag those values over. Actually, instead of dragging the values over, we'll add a calculated value for the converted date and time. And it's easy to do. You can even format it once you've added the calculated value, make it a date. We have just the date time here, so we'll just change it to this date. We don't need the time. Well, we can add the time later if we want to. And that's it. So let's try this one more time here. Japanese yen. Button. Okay, so we've created a little control here. There's a nice currency conversion control that we can use in our form. So the first step is we want to save it. So we're going to save it as currency converter, and notice that in preview, so you don't want to save from preview. So you go back to your designer and file save as. Before we save it, let me show you one more option here. On the info tab here in 2010, you have the option of template part properties, and here we can actually add a nice picture. So let's do that. Let's add a nice picture. We've got a convert icon here that we'll add. And then we'll save it. And we'll save it as currency converter 2, one that I'd already designed. I was testing it earlier, but I'm not going to use that. Okay, so once I'm done, now I can go into my form. And let's just go into one of my sample forms here. Got expense report 1. You'll get all these forms as part of the webinar today. And I'm going to open up this form, expense report. I'm just going to go down to the bottom of it and say, well, I want to add this currency conversion. And I go to my custom controls, and I have to add the control to begin with, so I'm going to add it. Template parts, browse to the location where I saved it. Pick the right one. There it is. See, it's version 1. It's the one I first created. And I just add it first to my list, and now I can reuse it. And when I do that, it is going to screw up the font, which is an InfoPath bug. But we're not going to worry too much about this. So we can change it back to what it was very easily. But I want to just show you how it works. So once I've added it to the form, now my expense report has that control at the bottom, and I can go in and change the control. Let's say I'm going to do the euro. Do we have euro? Let's see here. How about pound? Now, who knows what the pound is? I guess someone could probably tell me this, but there's the euro. There's the euro. Okay, so the control has saved me a significant amount of time. Let's go back to our presentation. So what I just did was I created a common section, and you can create these common sections for addresses, you can create them for currency conversion, you can do them for all kinds of things. Here's a list of some of the examples that we've done in the past. I'm going to show you another example in a second for tasks. There are lots of common sections in your form. They're easy to create. You saw how I did it. Just go into your InfoPath Designer. You click on the blank template part, design the form, and then you create your XTP. And then you can create it from an existing form or from scratch. A couple different techniques. If you create it from an existing form, you have to rebind the fields once you copy them in. It's not too hard. The template part doesn't have all the features of the form template, and it's missing some of the things on the header. When you're in the design mode, you only see those 5 tabs on top in the menu, the ribbon there, instead of all the normal ones. Here's a list of some of the features that are not included with template parts. But they are easy to add. Once you've created them, you go into your add or remove custom controls. You find the template part that you want. and you add it. And once you've added it, then you can select it from the custom controls list. And that's all there is to it. So the benefit of XML template parts, well, you've got lots of forms, and they all are going to share common sections, headers, footers, whatever. Creating those sections takes you time to make it look really good and all that. Rather than redo it for every single form, template parts allow you to reuse the good work that you've done over and over again. You just drag and drop them into your form. They also promote consistency, and there's other benefits here. You get consistent schema. The template parts add a data source is the same, and that means that you can reuse it. If you're doing reporting, that same data is going to be the same structure for all your forms. Okay, so that's the quick benefit. Now template parts work really well with universal data connections. And what's a universal data connection? Well, let's just take a look here at our template part. So our template part, so I'm going to close this out and go to our template part screen. Here's the template part we just created. Now, I've got a data connection in here, and the nice thing about template parts are they reuse, not only do they reuse the view, when I copied it into my other form, I got all the view components. I got the logic for setting the values, and I got the data connection, right, which is really great. But I don't want to have to reconfigure this data connection. Well, I can use this XML template part as is. You notice that when I copied it into the form, I did not have to configure the currency converter data connection. Okay, I just added it and ran it in preview. But let's say you have a browser form. You're using Office 365, or maybe you have SharePoint 2010, you have a browser form. Well, you're not going to be able to use those data connections that connect directly to a web service. You're going to have to convert them into what Microsoft calls universal data connections. And what you do is you go to the Data Connections tab, you select your data connection here, and you click on this Convert to Connection file. And then you have to give it a location of your data connection. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to save this up to, let's see here, I've got a bunch of document libraries on this site that I'm using. What you need to do is you need to create a data connection library. And rather than use this site, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you how you can use Office 365 to do this. We have an Office 365 site, and the site has a data connections library. And so hopefully, we will find out how to do this. One moment. I just did this earlier a minute ago, so I'm pretty sure it works. I'm sure it works. I just need to do the same thing I did a few minutes ago. Well, maybe not. Okay, so let's say you don't have a data connection library. You go out to your SharePoint site. Here's our SharePoint site. And we're going to go to the data connection library page. Okay, here's our data connections. You just copy the link to your data connection library into the wizard. Now, if you don't have a data connection, you can go to Site Actions, you can click on More Options, and you can create one. And they're pretty easy to create, and they do require SharePoint. So we're just going to copy this in here, and instead of using the all items at the end here, we're going to call this, we're just going to call it currency converter. Okay, now with any luck, it's going to save that data connection out there as a relative universal data connection. And you can see it succeeded because it converted that. The details down below were changed. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means if I go back to my data connection library and refresh this, that now I have a data connection out here called conversion rate. That's the one I just added. You can see the date time there, 8:26 a.m. And what that means is that if I'm creating a new form, I don't have to add the data connection from scratch. I don't have to remember the URL, and that saves me time because I don't have to configure it. So let's just say I was adding another data connection to this XTP and I wanted to reuse it. I would just go to search down here, and I would find the data connection on my site here. And you can see here that once I expand it, it's right there. I don't have to remember the specific URL. I don't have to remember how to configure it. I can just choose it from the list of UDCs that have been previously published and reuse it. So that's the benefit. And we can save the XML template part with the UDC in it, which is the best practice. And then, of course, what you're going to want to do is re-add it to your form. So let's go back to our expense report form. So here's our expense report form. Now what we're going to do is we're going to re-add that template part. And first of all, I'll delete it. Where is it? I guess I didn't have it in here. I don't see it in here. So I will add it again. If it's already in there, it's going to complain, but we'll try again here. That's 2, so it did work. Okay, and now we can go in down below here, and we add it this time. We'll add it, and instead of if we look at the data connections, you'll see that now it's actually UDC. It's a relative universal data connection. So it actually added it in the correct format, and I can preview it in this way. Just going off to the website, getting the link, getting the rate, and there we go. So that's an example of how to convert a data connection into a universal data connection. Okay, so once again, the benefits are data connections aren't always super easy to create. Rather than have to create them for every form from scratch, UDCs allow you to create one and you reuse it. Also, you can update your data connections without republishing your XSM. So the other benefits are that you need them if you're using browser-based forms, and that's the main other benefit here. Okay, so let me show you one more technique. So once you have your XML template parts and you have your UDCs created, what you're going to do is you're going to have a library of XML template parts. So you're going to have somewhere between 20 and 30 of these XML template parts for the common sections in your form. And then what you're going to do is you can quickly create a form from scratch, or you can create starter forms. Let's say that you don't have a starter form, you're going to want to create from scratch, so you're going to go in and create a form from scratch. So let me just show you this real quick here. I've got a form saved on my computer here called blank. And this form is just a blank form. So I'm going to just delete the section here. I'm going to create a form using XML template parts. So very quickly, I've added a header template part. So I've got a header here with help. And what I'll do is, this template part actually has a bunch of red text in it. You see the 1, 2, 3, the steps here. And this is useful when you're creating template parts because you can tell your form designers what to do to add the template parts. And here we're just giving them instructions. Template parts, they always add a section to your form in the data source here. And sometimes you want to fix it up to make it look, basically reduce it so it's not as, doesn't add as much stuff. And that's what we're doing here is we're just going to be deleting this section and rebinding it. It's very simple to make these quick changes to the form. And it's just to sort of spruce up the data source here. Let me just delete the text, and then now we have this nice template part that we've added to our form to give us a header with the conditional help section there at the top. When I click on the Show Help button, it's going to automatically show that. And now let's add a footer down below it. So once again, I can very quickly create a form using these XML template parts and just following these instructions here that I've got in the form. And I think I rebound it. Delete the footer. It's less impact to your data source if you do that kind of fix up. And now we've got, very simply, create a form here with very little effort by dragging and dropping 2 template parts in that gives us a nice quick start to our form development. Gives us a header with our logo. Now there's a little bit of spacing in between these, and you can get rid of that by just kind of playing with the formatting here, stretching it out a bit. You can see it takes a little bit of time here to figure that out, but you can do it. It's not that hard. Yeah, let's just try one more time here, show you that it's possible. I guess I'm not going to be able to get it done there, but that space in between them can be removed by just playing with the spacing a little bit between these 2 forms. Okay, so once we have this created now, the next step is going to be to make this actually a little more interesting. So I've got a picture perfect XML template part. This one's actually much more interesting. It has a picture element here, and what we're going to do is we're going to quickly create a form that can submit pictures to our SharePoint site. So in the data connections here, it added a data connection to upload these pictures, and I want this to point to my SharePoint site, not the one in the XTP. So I'm just going to change the data connection here to go to the SharePoint site that I have for my demo. Just take all the defaults. Okay, I'm just reconfiguring the data connection. That's for the second step. And then we'll delete the text here. And there's a few more steps here. I've got a button that's going to upload the pictures, and I need to change the rules on that. So once again, there's a lot of logic in this template part, but there is a little bit of fix-up that you do need to do. And specifically, what you need to do is go into this and change the command to use. Anyway, the instructions are in here. I'm just going to fix this up here, add the URL for my library. Just want to verify I have that correct. Here's my URL. Okay, so I'm just fixing up my template part after I've added it. And I'm going to delete my text now. And I'm going to preview. So now we've just quickly created a form that has a header, a footer, and this nice little image control that allows us to upload images to a SharePoint picture library. By clicking on the button, automatically it's going to take that image, it's going to convert it into a picture and into a link. And now we have a nice control that allows us to expand and collapse an image. And this is useful when you're dealing with like iPads and things like that, and you want to give people a way to expand and collapse images. We've demoed this before, obviously. Some people are familiar with it. If I go to the library and click on refresh, you'll see that the picture was added, along with another picture I was using for my testing earlier, but that's the picture I just added. Okay, so that's a quick way to quickly create forms using template parts. Now, once you have your template parts created, what I recommend doing is creating these starter forms. This is the third technique here. And let me show you what a couple examples are here. We've got these examples that you'll get as part of the training, the webinar today. And I'm almost done with the webinar. A few more minutes. So one of the forms is this Chrome example. This has a nice bezel around it. It has a help section, about section. You can see the tabs here are rounded. The buttons for the tabs are actually round buttons. There's some nice visual components here. So that's one of the starter forms. And you're going to be creating some of these container forms for your starter form. So here, that's one example. Let's show you one more example here. We've got vertical tabs, and actually I'll show you two more examples. So when you have too many menus on the top, you can't put them all horizontally. This is an example of how to do it vertically on the right. So this is another container form, another form that you can use as a starter form to make it easy to create forms internally. That's crazy. Now there's a dialog box open somewhere in InfoPath. I'll show you one more starter form. I'm not going too fast here. Last one. Now this one has, I'll preview this and show you what this looks like here. But this is it's got a header, it's got the show help section, it's got a submit button built into it. It's got, of course, our tabs. It's got a change history here. I can add some comments, and it creates a change history. So this is another example of the starter form. In general, what you're going to want to do is create starter forms that have common colors, headers, logos, footers, taglines. You're going to want to have maybe tabs in your body. Maybe you can have vertical tabs, or you can have them across the top. Maybe change history section. And then you're going to want a footer that has your organization logo, maybe legal terms and conditions, and your form version. That's really important. Okay, so once again, to recap, what we showed today is how to create an XML template part, how to use get universal data connections to reduce the time it takes to configure data connections. I showed you several starter forms. I even actually created a couple forms from XML template parts. I created one form. You're going to take those techniques and you're going to create your own starter forms, distribute them to your form designers, and start cranking out forms. We have a best practice compliance solution that allows you to rate your forms, so you can actually have another process in place that rates the forms that come out of that form factory. As people create and develop forms, you can have those forms submitted to another form that actually rates the forms. So we have free samples for you today. All you need to do to get the samples are you can either post a short review on the Microsoft Pinpoint site. And if you do give us 3 stars out of 5, please give us a reason for that. Maybe the video was bad, who knows. But or an easier technique is just to retweet at Qdabra Software. And you can see here that last week, Ingeborg actually retweeted our webinar last week. So this is an example. You just basically go to Twitter, you search for Qdabra, find the webinar tweet from yesterday, and then retweet it from your account. Or you can just click the plus on the Facebook page, and once we see that, we will send you the package of goodies, and that includes all these forms. Some of these I showed you along with the presentation. And thank you very much for joining me today. If you have any questions, I've got a few minutes here. I'll answer them. You can ask me a question about what you saw or about anything under the sun, and I'll open up to questions. Marcy, how was the audio? How was the video? I was doing the presentation. Was it as bad as last week?
No, it was fine this week.
That's great. So we're just waiting for questions, and I want to thank you all for joining me today. We are doing this weekly webinar once a week. Next week we'll be doing something different. I redid this week 2 webinars that have been well received in the past. The last week was data-driven design. And that webinar is now on YouTube. And then today, showing you how to create a form factory using these 2 techniques. So next week, we'll probably show you something related with search and SharePoint, or we may go off on a different tangent and do something different. So I want to encourage you to join us next week. Every week, we do these free webinars for you that we hope to make in 20, 30 minutes. I appreciate your patience today as we were going through the process of figuring out what we're going to use for our webinar. We got one question from Brian here. Yeah, so this is a good question. Brian's question is, where do you store your UDCs? Now, there are 2 types of UDCs. There's a relative, and then there's the admin approved. If you're creating a relative UDC, it's going to be relative to the site. So you're going to store those all on your same site. Now, you can take that UDC and you can convert it into a content, into a site, a UDC that can use across sites. But it's not a simple process, and it's not intuitive. We've had a number of people experiencing problems with this, And Hillary recently posted a couple workarounds on InfoPath Dev. If you're interested in going that route of using a non-relative UDC, in other words, a UDC that can be used across multiple sites, please send an email to coursemanager@qdabra.com or go out to InfoPath Dev and search for that. Next question is from Ralph. And Ralph is interested in change history that we showed. And that's going to be as part of the, when you get the packet from us, we'll have that sample, the Qdabra InfoPath, the starter form. You can take a look at how we did it. Let's go back to it here if I can find it. So you can see here that the change history is kind of tricky. What it does is it has a very simple section down here below. We actually have an XML template part that does this. And then we have another section down below that's read-only. You can see that this is just all calculated values. You can't edit them. And this section only shows up if there's history. So if there's no status, or if there's no date time, we just hide the section. So as soon as we have one, we show them all. And we have some cool little techniques here we're using to show you these. You can look at the calculated values from this. You can see how we're doing this. But yeah, so the one on top here is only selecting, I believe, let's see here if I can find it here. Let's see this one here. So it's bound to that comment, but it's only showing the one. So there's a rule on a repeating table. And this rule has a condition, count preceding sibling. It's only actually showing the one that is the last row. And that's the trick there, is as we only show the last item in the list, so as we're adding them, right, it adds them all down below. And then it just only shows the blank one. So that's kind of cool. So you can see how we did that when you get the samples from us. Hopefully I answered your question. Justin has a question. I have already done a review on Pinpoint. Thank you very much, Justin. You'll get the packet. Don't worry about Twitter or Facebook. If you've done one review in the past, that's good enough for us. You're going to get the goodies. So that's the 3 questions we have, and I'll wait another few minutes here before we sign off. Once again, I want to thank you for joining. If you have any feedback for us, we're trying to improve our webinars every week for you. Please don't hesitate to give us that feedback as part of your Twitter post or whatever. You can send it directly to us. We look forward to serving you again next week. That will be 5/2. I will not be doing a webinar next week. We will have somebody else do it. It's been fun. I hope you have a great day, and we will be sending out that packet of information, and the video will be going live before the end of the day. Thank you very much.